Okay. So, again, thank you to Dharma for the from the Khyentse Vision for asking me to read this, the words of a young sage. Of course, in Tibetan, it's called Changsong Zhenu Tam. Changsong, of course, it's widely translated as sage, but Changsong, literally, I think it just means someone who's very straightforward, very honest. Changpo literally means straight, honest. Song also means something very, very straight, without what do you call it, the bends or twistiness. So it really here it refers to someone who's made their life to be something that is very straight, something that is very wholesome. Zhenu, the word zhenu in Tibetan is young, but as it is Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo who wrote it, I think the word young here can also be similar to how one talks about Manjushri. Is that better? Okay. So, young in the sense someone that is beyond aging. So the words of Jigme Khyentse Wangpo. So in Tibetan, this text is called Rangzhenki Chötsula Yi Ngeparnjungwa Doji Lo Changsong Zhenu Tam. Of course, the name is Changsong Zhenu Tam, but this the words of the young sage. It's inspired by, as it says here, inspired by seeing the conduct, it says here, of oneself and others. So he's suggesting that this is a self-reflection as well as reflecting on the conduct and the behavior of those of the other people. He says for reflect a song of, literally it's translated as renunciation, but nge njung in Tibetan, the word nge means certain, njung is extract. So it is a song of renunciation, but I think in this title we can also translate it as the wish to extricate oneself from the, I suppose we could say, the questionable conduct of oneself and others. Of course, I'm taking a lot of liberty translating it, something that suits me, and it's so if we can see it from that point of view, then you'll understand the actual song of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. where he says, I'm now reading from the English translation, which is really beautiful. It says here, alas, thinking of you soothes the anguish in my heart. O Guru, all-pervasive Lord, endowed with a wisdom body, peerless in your kindness, please always rest your jeweled feet on the lotus at the crown of my heart. So, first one, thinking of you who soothes the anguish in my heart. So thinking of you removes, evaporates all anguish in my heart. I suppose one can say that based on this, the title where he says, upon reflecting on one's own conduct and the conduct of others, I suppose we can say that this is the part of the anguish that he's talking about. So he's saying here he's talking about the anguish and the one that can actually dispel all this anguish. And here, that one he refers to as his teacher, Chabda Lama Yishiki Gujen. O Guru, all-pervasive Lord, endowed with a wisdom body, all-pervading Guru, endowed with a wisdom body, meaning his teacher is the wisdom body, or the one that manifests, the one that embodies wisdom to him. Yishiki Pujen, endowed with a wisdom body. The word wisdom here is translated from the Tibetan word ye shi. Ye also means, it refers to something like, in Tibetan, Dharma, primordial. But it's not only primordial in terms of, I think, time, like once upon a time kind of time. But like if we actually are analyzing, trying to check something, then from that point of view, it could be the primal element of something, the very basic first element of something. So from that point of view, ye. So here the word ye, wisdom, ye, I think symbolize means the nature of something as it is. From that point of view, we're using the word primordial. It actually just means knowing. So he refers to his teacher as the one who knows the nature of things just as it is. So that is what he is referring to here as Yeshiki Kuchen, the wisdom body, one endowed with a wisdom body. Whose kindness is incomparable. So, peerless in your kindness, please always rest your jeweled feet on the lotus at the crown of my head. So that is usually how all texts are composed, with paying homage. And now this is the actual reflection that he is making, Khyentse Wangpo is making. And so in Tibetan, Lekbar Sumdang Lmung Tebo is saying, think properly. You, that's very well translated, you stubborn fool. This is really making a reflection on himself, and I suppose, as he said in the beginning, looking at others, just like we would do when we are watching a documentary, reading something, watching a movie. Like when we see any kind of news, we make so many comments on those people's, what things that they're saying. We want to say, you stupid fool, etc., etc., etc. It's really, that is a reflection we're making on others. Khyentse Wangpo here is making that valid for both oneself and others. And from that point of view, tepo, stubborn, it's the usual example that we use is someone very rigid. What do you call it? Somebody who's very rigid, who's not open, and very, very self-satisfied. The example that we use is that we say that usually if you have stiff leather, we use oil or butter to make it malleable. But then also in Tibet, they use leather casing to put butter in, and that is really stiff. And an example is that this leather casing, even though it's in contact with butter all the time, it's just stiff. So here Khyentse Wangpo is making this reference to somebody who's supposed to be practicing, reading, contemplating, meditating, but we are not at all affected by the teachings. So like a butter casing that is leather, that should be malleable, but it's stiff. So this is what he's referring to. And he's saying here, like fool, for somebody who's been studying, practicing, contemplating, analyzing, somebody who's supposed to be very, very knowledgeable, very, very experienced, but not at all affected by any of these practices. So that's why he's making this reference to a fool. Reflect well, he's saying. Then what he's saying here is, look at how wretched and pathetic. Of course, he's saying this to himself. Look at how wretched and pathetic I am, or you are. Saying, when I look at myself, literally in Tibetan, Rangatena, meaning when I look at myself, Kumetam Tabduk, wretched and pathetic. Kume is literally powerless, hopeless. Kume Tabduk is helpless. Again, why he's making this reference is like the butter in its casing. that is supposed to be malleable. But when I look at myself, not having had the ability to tame my mind, then I'm powerless, hopeless. And then he's saying, so when I look at myself, I feel powerless, helpless. When I look outside at others, don't have much hope either, just more disappointment. So reflect well, you stubborn fool. Look at how wretched and pathetic we are. I am. And how pitiful everyone else is too. Whatever you're concerned with yourself with is pointless. He's saying, whatever I think of, wherever I put my attention, everything looks essenceless, hopeless. Here, you have studied. Again, here, this you is not only meant to others, also, and mainly, it's a self-reflection. Studied so much, but your words are dry, but just recite dry words. And even in that, you've studied so much, but just recite dry words. You teach and spread the Dharma, but it brings corruption of Samaya. You teach and spread the Dharma, but it brings corruption of Samaya. You've developed genuine altruism, but others just see it as a front. Look at the way things happen in this terrible, degenerate age. This all sounds rather depressing, what Khyentse Wangpo is saying here. And I suppose that's why in the beginning he calls it Changsong Zhenyu Dang, the sage's words. But I think that's why it's really helpful to understand here the sage as somebody who is just saying it as it is, as he feels. So what he's saying here is that, of course, studying is something very, very helpful, very important. But if this studying is not touching one's mind, touching one's conduct, then it is nothing but dry words. And even if one teaches and spreads the Dharma, if it is not received properly, understood properly, and put in practice, then it is simply just brings corruption of smiling. It's not that that brings corruption of smiling. It's more that whatever is taught, whoever hears it, if there is no connection between what is studied, what is received, what is practiced, and how one leads one's life, conduct of the body, speech, and mind, then it is simply bringing corruption in one's own life, in one's own conduct, in one's own relation to not only to the between those who teach and those who practice, but in general, it just makes us more makes us more corrupt. So therefore, he is saying, even spreading and teaching the Dharma is nothing but accomplishing samaya corruption. Even if we have developed genuine altruism, it is seen just as a front. It is seen as and they say, this is actually what I suppose this is what we can call degenerate age. Despite your good intentions, you lack wealth and power, so you have no means to benefit beings. Can't you see you've been fooling yourself and others, wasting your life in futile endeavors? So even if you have the right intention, power, I suppose, well, because you don't have that, then you don't have the capacity to help others. I suppose this is something even now we all can feel. There is so much turmoil in our lives, and we feel powerless. When you hear about so many people suffering from lack of food, clothing, etc., one would wish one had limitless wealth to make a difference. Not only that, one would wish that one could convince others to do something. But he's saying here, we feel helpless, powerless. Therefore, we do not have the capacity and opportunity to help others. Therefore, wasting our life on futile endeavors, can't we see that we've been fooling ourselves and others? The privileged, Tata in Tibetan, privileged are puffed with pride, the lowly are slaves to getting food and clothing. So those who we think are privileged, in Tibetan it says, Nagyalji are swollen by their pride, and those who are not privileged are the servants, are slaves of food and clothing. Meaning all of them, both privileged and underprivileged, are under the power of their own ignorance, inability. How can the conqueror's teaching be held? So all are foolish, ignorant. With this, it says, with such conduct, with such abilities, how can we uphold the victorious one's teachings? All the learned ones are caught in the thicket of their own attachment and aggression, hope and fear. And those who, most scholars are stuck in a thicket of attachment and aversion. Many self-proclaimed siddhas just practice demonic magic. So here, self-proclaimed siddhas that he's talking about, just practicing demonic magic. I don't think it means only, it means that they're practicing black magic or something like that. Because here, the real definition of demon is actually ignorance. Ignorance, the believing in mistaken views, errors, that ignorance is really what is defined as the real demon. So self-proclaimed siddhas, some people who might think that they are greatly accomplished, but might still be swollen by their own pride. But that swollen by their own pride, that is really the demon he's talking about. So he's saying this is just the trick of the demon's magic. So he's saying all of these, I see them as Mount Kailash. You know, Mount Kailash is something that many people talk about. Anybody who's been there talk about it, and all of us just dream about it. We, what do you call it, fantasize going around it and dream about it. So I think what he's saying here is stop dreaming, stop fantasizing about this kind of the fame of Mount Kailash, the advertising of Mount Kailash. Take charge of yourself instead. He's saying, take your own life in your own hands and start doing something. Basically, it's saying, take your own discipline in your own hands and don't wait for somebody else to do something to change you. Running Shabby monasteries is like running the chambers of hell. When we think of I suppose when we think of Dharma, that is really what we're, of course, in one sense, a place for people to stay is, of course, something that is inevitable, whether we talk about monasteries in general or one's own place. It's, we're humans, we need some place to stay. And also, monasteries. But actually, what are they? When we say monastery, when we say our place, when we say center, what is it actually that we're thinking of? That mental image that we have is much more related to that actual structure, frame. That's why I think it's been translated as shabby. It's just, and then when we hear about that place, our place, like it doesn't have to be monasteries, houses, parents, places, whatever it is, we're always worried about it. And if something is amiss in that place, we're worried, thinking who did what, who did not do what. And he's saying, this one was saying, looking after a big institution, it's just like that. It will bring the cause of a hellish experience in us. It is nothing but a hall of a hell realm because it just brings more worries. And then if you have a place like that, if you happen to be manager of a big institution like that, all the rules and regulations that you have to look after is an endless, what is it? How do you translate it here? Endless labor. Like, sonam literally is like what the farmers do, Every year they have to sow seed, grow, harvest, grow, seed, harvest, etc., etc. So he's saying it's endless. Once you have an institution and you have to worry about it, and then you have to make sure that everybody abides by the rule. So here, I think this one he's giving this advice or making this reflection for anybody who might be responsible for an institution and making sure that all the rules and regulations are followed. And if one does that, then he says again, once you have a thing like that, then you have to worry about running it You have to worry about funding it. Then it says here, you can try to flatter patrons, but they are fickle by nature. Literally, flattering or taking care of the funding or the funders or sponsors is, he's saying here, Ngu is to make somebody happy. Kang is the opposite. So he's saying, looking after a temple like that, or an institution, or whatever it is, you are constantly between making somebody happy and being afraid of irritating them, not making them happy. So it's a mixture. It is by, he's saying, looking after sponsors is by nature trying to make somebody happy and constantly being squeezed by terror or by irritation or anxiety. From every point of view, see how futile it is. Because when we're trying to please someone, we really feel that it is something that is possible to have only pleasing and no irritation or no fear. But he's saying that is never possible. The lamas and leaders, he's saying, that one depends on are the source of hope and fear. The retinue and students who depend on us are the field of suffering, futile ground of suffering. Adversaries to be defeated are kindling for your anger. Loved ones and wealth. Loved ones and wealth to defend only invite our attachment, our fears. Doing such endeavors are tiring, futile. See this, seeing this as a play, a theater play performed by crazy people. Take as your teacher a life without planning, It doesn't mean without planning, literally. It means a life without this hope and fear, looking for something outside, looking for something somewhere outside, like many of us do. Some of us feel that we don't know who we are, so we're all travel to the end of the world to find ourselves. It's really this. What he means here is don't look for it outside. Make long plans of finding something somewhere. Because if it is within us, then you don't really have to plan so much. But if it is somewhere so far away, then you have to make plans, book tickets, find rooms, etc., etc. And then what kind of room are we going to get? Does this room have air conditioning? Will this air conditioning last? Does that have dampness or not dampness? These are so far long-winded plans that Khyentse Wangpo was saying is not worth, because try as we may, we will end up with the opposite. Most of the time we do. If it doesn't, great. No. But at least what he's saying here is all of that planning, go ahead and plan, but don't expect those plans to always happen, because that's even worse. So he's saying that teacher is what you should follow. That does not depend on some long-winded planning. What is it? 7-year plan, 5-year plan, 3-year plan, and then all of that. I'm sure so many people have been planning their careers, and then somebody somebody comes and changes all those plans, like everybody in this world is at the moment experiencing. So since one was saying, go with the teacher that does not depend on this kind of long-winded planning in the future. There's a story in Tibet. There's some in the Words of a Perfect Teacher where it's talking about famous moon. This man, this poor man, manages to gather a sack of some grain, and then when he gets home, he's to some place. He's worried that the rats will chew on it, so he ties up that bag on the ceiling, and then he makes these plans with this grain. I'm going to, invest it in this and in that, and then this, and then I'll become really rich. And then when I become really rich, I'm going to have children. And then what am I going to call the child? And then he looks at the moon, and then he says, oh, I'm going to call the child the famous moon. And then by that time, the mouse has chewed up on the rope, and then it falls on his head and he dies. So Khyentse Wangpo was saying, don't make those kind of plans. He's saying, use that as a teacher. Go to a place, solitary place, where there is no distraction, no one torturing you, no one disappointing you. Shekla. Whatever you have heard so far, studied so far from the learned and noble beings, be happy with that. And then head some to it. Turtang Ningbo Chiwaye Nyamne, Tani Mere Gurentu Duku. It is high time you take the key points of what you have learned and actually put them into practice. Alte Drupa Machung to Sinyam, Ranjingo Kowandi Pani, Chadang Mebe Karki Yurtu, Zate Tawe Joyula Shushik. Even if you don't manage, haven't managed to practice, or don't manage to practice, stop deceiving yourself and others. Alte Drupa Machung to Sinyam, Ranjingo Kowandi Pani, Chadang Mebe Karki Yurtu. Settle in a way of life without frame of reference, in a place that is pleasant, in a place that suits you, where there is no hope and fear boiling, bubbling under you, or in other words, attachment and aversion. Settle in a way, into a way of life without frame of reference. Juyula Shushi. Go to a place without where you are free from reference points. Basically, his meaning, be self-sufficient. Look inward, tame your mind, and don't look for references outside. And then one day, one can even be without references within. But at this moment, don't be super dependent on praise. Don't be afraid of being criticized. Don't use them as references. Become free. In fact, here, Changsong Zhenu, the young sage, is somebody who is free from reference, somebody who does not need to lie to others, somebody who does not need to be afraid of others, someone who is straight, someone who is honest. That's more or less what this text is saying. Of course, the way I've said it is just my own interpretation. There's so many ways of interpreting this. So I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Rinpoche, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just from a translator's perspective, the tone of this text is quite colloquial and direct.
Yes.
And it's hard to do a literal translation without finding phrases in English that have the same punchy moderns. Yes. Is it okay from your perspective to really kind of choose a modern phrase that has the same impact rather than a literal translation in this kind of text?
I think it really needs more what he's meaning rather than the literal translation. Of course, proper literal translation would be if we had Khyentse Wangpo's grasp of the Tibetan language. I think, I don't know, if according to the English language, it would have been really good if Shakespeare was living and if he could understand it and then translate it. Then it might have the same kind of taste and punchiness. Otherwise, I think we just have to be happy with what we can do. Well, this text was translated by Jamie Gordon. He's done a very good job here with the translation. Thank you very much, Jamie Gordon.
Would you be able to give us the link?
Yes. Rangenji chuchule yi ngebrunjungwe dojilu changsong zhenyu tamshi chawa. Kema tembe nyingi dongwa kunsawe kyabda lamma yi shiki gochin gadri nyame sharsin ki norpo. Jiwe pe manja mezu shoshi lepa sunda lumung ki tepo. Rangla teni kume dan tabdu. Zhela tena yimu ki rangen jila samki nyingbo ne machi. Mangdu tuyen tsikam ki sharjang chepar shekyang tamnyam ki dotab. Lasam kyang yosro to tongwe tungi nyingme jilu la zikdang. Samba gayang tomjo ki embe zhenla penpe kokabni manchi. Mesi tamche tume ki chabwe rangen nyingo korwandi tongam. Tata ngochi ngagyar ki böshing shen namki togu ki korpo. Kungyam lunshing tumu ki rangen. Dinte kyaten chita rangzing ang. Kepa pacha chadang ki changsing chuktok lam ka duri ki gyunchur. Kankarti se gyang chatar tongwe tani rangchu rangi ki sunshi gongko kanzin kya nyawa ye chwakang dikdang tasan zime ki sonam jindang ngosung ko kange rangashin jigen hingo me las yen nepa la sumdang pratyo labyo re dogen jongne churto korlo dunga ki shingsa do juta wa shitange pushen kangju nyen non do cha jangju nyen non do cha ji yamo dende kale tome ki chasha nyumbe do kar Zewatan Tongwene, Lona Tung, Lopendang Rote, Meme Wember, Sudoshela, Palan Kebe, Shalunki Dutzi, Tenga Tupatsam, Tesam Ki Chopo, Yingling, Tuning, Yingbo Chewa Yanyane, Anne Merengo Rento Toko, Kadituba Majundo Sinjang, Lanjing Yingbo Prova, Depane, Chadam Mepa, Katiki Yoto, Zatetrawe, Joyola Shushi, Jepang, Tojundo Mepao. Thank you very much.
And do we have time for any more questions?
Yeah.
There's just a couple coming in on the Zoom.
Yes.
Rohita's asking when it's referring to going to a solitary place for practicing, can that also refer to somewhere within rather than externally? And a follow-up question, which might be related from Heidi, is can you tell us more about being self-sufficient and living in a place without hope and fear?
Solitary place, being undisturbed. It really depends on whether we are whether we're able to not be under the sway of our fear of rejection and not getting what we want. It really, solitary place means some place where these two are not aggravated. So whether it is inside or outside, I think it matters very little. And what was that?
The other one was more about being self-sufficient and living in a place without hope and fear.
So here, there's the last two lines. Chandang me le kalkiki yultu. A place where fear of rejection and fear of not getting what we want. Literally, this is what he calls, what is usually called a place where there is no aggression and no attachment. But basically, this is what it means. A place where these two are not constantly being triggered in us. Wherever that is, he says here, is a place that is, how is it translated in English? Kaki. Pleasant place. Wherever one is, wherever it is enjoyable. So in a place that is enjoyable, free from fear of rejection and fear of not getting what we want. In that place, because as long as that is there, we're full of reference, always wanting something, and we're always having to calculate around someone, something. And when this inner fear of rejection and fear of not getting what we want, basically attachment and aggression, when this is reduced and we are more at ease, then we're much less calculating, conniving. So that's what he means by free of reference, without framework of reference. And that is the beginning of becoming self-sufficient. To the point one day we even need to be able to transcend the self and then really be without reference. Because this reference that we all have is based on self, oneself, and others. Zate Talwan, but that's what it is in Tibetan. Eso Talwan. It's actually free from, not without. No, it's not lacking reference, but it is transcending reference. Is that it?
There's one more related to dealing with family turmoil from Jodi. But I was also wanting to add something to that, just how you balance karmic debt to beings when you've got a lot of responsibilities and you're looking after other beings, whether they're humans or animals or both. How you balance trying to, on one hand, be self-sufficient and reduce attachment, reduce engagement in some way, but on the other hand, you need to be able to, you know, be compassionate and care about others and fulfill your responsibility.
So what was the first one?
The first one was about, linked to how to deal with family turmoil.
Family turmoil. I think it's no. The loved ones and wealth to defend only invite your attachment. Really, when we're talking about loved ones cared for, I think Khyentse Wangpo was definitely not saying not to care. He's not saying don't care for them. But sometimes when we care for somebody, we would like them to do things in the way we would like them to do. Now that is, I think, what he's saying here. It's the what is it? The Chagyayamo, invitation to attachment. He's not saying don't care for things, don't care for loved ones, or anything like that. But to really look into that, what part of that is our own agenda and what part isn't? You want somebody to do something in a certain way. I suppose we need to be able to relate to our parents like we do to our cats. The cat, you want them to do something in a specific way, they will not do it in the way you want them to do it. They will do exactly what they want to do. So if we're able to accept cats to do whatever they want, we need to be able to do that with other members of our family. The cat, they will eat, shit, where they want. They do certain things at this moment because I think we're somewhat, what is it? Can we say we're just lucky? And if, unbeknownst to you, if you offend the cat, they will definitely, maybe not your cats, but they will definitely come and do something. Like a year ago, I stayed at a place of somebody you know, and I didn't let the cat do a certain thing, and then the cat came and threw the things from my table because he was upset. Even if you are really sweet to the cat afterwards, I think if we can accept our relatives like their cats, I think that's the best we can do at the moment. And one day, maybe, we can relate, we can become, what is it called, super cats, and then relate to them as such. So here, when he's saying that relatives are invitation to attachment, that is what it actually means. Attachment, it's not, we mistake love and attachment. And when we, through love, want our cat mother, cat sister, cat father, cat's brother to do certain things, and they don't do it, and then it disturbs us, we're worried. That's called attachment. We're disappointed. That's called attachment, because literally attachment just means stuck. We are tying ourselves to an idea of somebody doing what we would like them to do, and when they don't, without us wanting to, we have become, powerless. So that's really the word attachment here. Cha, ndo, cha. If we put these two words separately, ndo means desire, cha means to attach. Attach to desire. Attached, being attached to somebody doing what we desire. Then I think it becomes clear that when we talk about caring for somebody, of course, it comes from a wish to care for somebody, which is absolutely important, which is indispensable in terms of training one's mind. Even though the general theme is caring, what that general theme is made up of, it's made up of a lot of our habits, a lot of our different views, and those, whether they are attachment or whether they are simple care, whether they are actually wanting somebody to be cared for. That's very difficult. We try to relate to oneself and others with a certain level of care. But what does that care actually consist of? That emotion that arises when we care for someone. What is that? What are the actual ingredients of that emotion? Does it have certain openness? Does it have certain stickiness? Does it have certain, conditions or not? I suppose those are very difficult to do. This is actually the whole theme of what Khyentse Wangpo is saying here. Like when he's saying, you've developed genuine altruism, but others see it as a front. It teaches Dharma, but it brings corruption of smile. You've studied much, but just dry words. No one studies much just to have dry words, but it happens to be dry words because there's always a disconnect between what you study, what we study, and how we're affected by it because of the underlying motivation, what that is. It's very difficult for that motivation to be altruistic all the time. And if it is not altruistic all the time, when it is not, does that motivation have an effect or not? Or if it doesn't have an effect, that's good. And then in which case, then what is it? What is all the next things going to do? And if it does have an effect, then what would it be? So it's just being able to look at what is happening without fear, without judgment to oneself or to others, and just seeing it as it is. So I suppose in that sense, then it would be young sage, the sage, Changsong. Okay, that. Okay, so this word from the, what do you call it? This poem from Khyentse Wangpo is very, very, what do you call it? Sobering poem. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to read this.